So now, my friend, let us understand a few definitions. This is the first section of the IT Act 2008, which contains a lot of definitions. To understand these definitions, let me give you an example, or let me try to explain how these various terms can be understood. The example which we are discussing here, in fact, we have also discussed the same when we did the chapter of protection of information assets. We also discussed about this chapter, but I am about this example, but I am repeating again in this particular chapter and this particular topic, because a lot of definitions are based on this example. Now, let us assume, as you would be seeing in the picture that is coming before you, that let us assume I need to send some very important information to somebody. As of now, just forget about computers, just forget about technology. Let's go back to an era when there were no computers, there was no technology. Now, I need to send some very important information to somebody who is living a bit far off from my place. I want to ensure that this information is very critical. For example, I have a very good business plan in mind I want to share with a friend of mine, and I don't want anybody to take this information, or I have got some critical information noted on a piece of paper. How do I send this information? I think of a method that instead of writing this particular note or writing this particular information in English, why not use a secretive language? I devise my own language. I devise a method wherein I would say A, instead of A, maybe I would write Z. Instead of B, maybe I would write Y. I make up some different language for myself. Now, when I write that particular information in this language, it would be practically impossible for anybody to understand this language unless he knows what code I have written. So, when I use this language and write this note and I send it to the friend of mine who is living far off from my place, maybe through a messenger or somebody else, and when he gets the note, he also knows the same language. So, now he translates the note back into the original language. So, two activities have been done. One, the note has been translated from English language to some other language, and then the note has been translated back by that friend of mine from some other language to English language. I want to have another level of security. I know that this language cannot be interpreted by everybody, but at the same time I want to have another check over it. So, what I would do, I would put this piece of paper in a box, and I would lock that particular box, and I lock that particular box with the key which I have, and it can either be opened by my key, or let us assume that there is another key which is available with my friend, which can be used to unlock this particular lock. So, now there is multi-factor, two types of security which has been implemented here. First, I have converted my note from English language to some other language which cannot be understood by everybody. So, even if anybody catches hold of this paper, he will not understand anything at all. And then I have also locked that particular information in a box, and it has been tightly locked. Now, if anybody gets the box, he has to first break this box, that might damage that piece of paper itself, and even he is able to take out that paper, he will still need to understand what is written, because that is a secret language. And on the other hand, if this box safely reaches my friend, he will unlock the particular piece of unlock the box, take out the information, and he will be able to translate back into his normal language. This entire process can now be thought of in electronic manner. So, now so now let us use some technical terms for the process. The first case, when I said that I am using English language, that text can be called as a clear text message. That is, the text is clear, anybody can read it. When I am converting it to some other text, let us call that as ciphertext. And this process of conversion from clear text to ciphertext is called encryption. And when I follow the reverse process, then the ciphertext is converted again back to the clear text, and that process is called decryption. So, there is encryption, there is decryption, there is ciphertext, there is clear text. Now, I also use an algorithm or a set of instructions to lock this information. And when I lock this information, there comes another term, that is a key. Key is nothing, it is not a physical key, it's a, you can think of it as a logical key. An algorithm is used and keys are generated. One key is used to lock the information, one key is used to unlock the information. So, we have the concept of private keys and public keys. And when there is another term which says that whenever you are using an algorithm for encrypting information, algorithm for decrypting information, an algorithm for generation of keys, that entire concept is known as crypto system. That entire concept or technology is known as a asymmetric crypto system. So, these are different terms or definitions which are given in the IT Act, and it is very important to understand this entire concept. And this technology is used in the digital signatures. I am sure, my friend, you would also be using lot of digital signatures in your office. When you are doing the ROC filings, when you are doing the income tax filings, you are supposed to attach the digital signature of the director of the company, partner of the partnership firm, Karta of the HUF. For an individual also, you are supposed to affix the digital signatures. This entire technology, these terms are all used for the purposes of digital signatures. So, to reiterate, I have clear text information which has to be converted to a ciphertext information. How do I do that? I make an algorithm, a set of instructions which says this should be converted into this, this should be done into this. And then I again have an algorithm for decrypting information, that is translating the ciphertext back to the clear text. So, there is one more algorithm. And there is one more algorithm, that is the third algorithm, whose object is to generate a pair of keys which can be used to lock the information, that is a private key, which can be used to unlock the information, that is a public key. And when these three types of algorithms are used, that entire concept is known as asymmetric crypto system. And where are you using this asymmetric crypto system? In a digital signature. And where are you using these digital signatures? We are using for filing of income tax returns, ROC returns, etc. These are also used for other purposes. For example, even for procurement, for a lot of tendering services these days, digital signature are used. Lot of other activities these are used. But for our purposes, we will focus ourselves on income tax and ROC returns, and even more specifically, the examples I will give you would be for if a company has to file the ROC returns, it has to get its documents signed by the director of the company, and instead of manually signing the documents, he is affixing a digital signature and signing the documents and then uploading on the ROC website. So, this is the introduction to the different definitions we are going to study, and now let us take all these definitions one by one. First, and all these definitions are covered as part of section 1 of the IT Act 2008. Yes, my friend, there would be sections in this subject also. If you thought that you are done with your sections in after having done Income Tax and Companies Act and all the different subjects, you are done with your sections. No, there are few sections in Information Systems Control and Audit also. So, section 1, it has got various definitions under various subclauses. I'll in the videos I'll only concentrate on those definitions which are related to all these concepts, but as part of your notes you would also be getting other definitions. So, let us just take these one by one. Private key means the key of a key pair used to create a digital signature. In our case, private key, or the example I would want you to appreciate is that the key which is available with the director of a company, his digital signature has got that private key, which will help him to create a digital signature or create a digitally signed document. Public key means the key of a key pair used to verify digital signature and listed in the digital signature certificate. Now, there is one more term which has come in here, digital signature certificate. That is, this is a certificate in which all the details of the digital signature are mentioned. For example, I want to, if you, whenever next time you are using a digital signature, just right click and go to its properties. It will tell you, or it will give you lot of information. This digital signature belongs to this person. Validity of the digital signature, 1 year or 2 year, keeps on changing at times. These days it is for 2 years. Issued by the name of the entity which has issued it. For example, Sifi Communications Limited or eMudra or any other company which has issued the signatures. So, the name of that, and this document which lists all the information is known as a digital signature certificate. That is, you are certified to use these characteristics as part of your digital certificate. So, public key and private key are, there is a pair of keys, there are two keys, one is a public key or a private key, and the private key means the key of a key pair used to create a digital signature, whereas public key means that key of the key pair which is used to verify the digital signature, and it is listed in the digital signature certificate. Asymmetric crypto system, it means a system of secure key consisting of a private key for creating a signature and public key for verifying the signature. So, that system in which two keys have to be used, that system is known as asymmetric crypto system. See, the object of having all these definitions in the IT Act was that government wanted to introduce a system of signing documents, and it could not have left it to it not have given the option to different people to choose any method of signing as they want. It had to prescribe certain procedures. So, it said, if you are supposed to use digital signatures, then you have to use a symmetric crypto system, which means there have to be two keys, a private key and a public key. This was prescribed, otherwise everybody would have come up with a solution that this is the way I can affix my signatures. So, government said, no, this is the procedure and you are going to abide by that if you want to use the digital signatures, and that is why all these definitions had to be mentioned in the Act. Key pair in an asymmetric crypto system means a private key and its mathematically related public key. Mathematically means both these keys are related. If both of them are used together, only then can successful filing be done. They have a relation to each other. You cannot use this key, you cannot have one private key and 2 or 3 public keys. No, it has to be one. They have to be related, and if both of them are joined together, only then can successful filing be done, and that's very important. So, key pair in an asymmetric crypto system means a private key and its mathematically related public key, which are so related that the public key can verify a digital signature signed by the private key or created by the private key. So, these two have to be mathematically related. Digital signatures. Digital signature means authentication of any electronic record by a subscriber by means of an electronic method or procedure as specified in section 3. We will take up section 3. Digital signature means authentication. Let us see all the important words which are used here. Authentication means signing in simpler terms. You are authenticating, just like signing. You were earlier signing the electronic in the income tax returns, now you are authenticating the income tax returns. Earlier you were signing the ROC returns, now you are authenticating the RO returns. How? By means of electronic method or procedure. And where is this method or procedure mentioned? It is in section 3. another term. It is, and this authentication of records is done by the subscriber. Subscriber means the person who has bought this digital signature. As I said, for us to remember who is the subscriber, we will retain the examples of a director of a company, a partner of a partnership firm, or karta of an HUF. These are these, or even an individual for himself. These are the examples of subscribers, people who sign the different returns, be it income tax or RLC returns. They are the subscribers, that is, they have subscribed to the digital signature, that is, they have bought the digital signatures. Electronic signature, another definition. Now, when IT Act 2000 was introduced, the relevant term was digital signatures. At that time, the digital signature technology was introduced, but over the passage of time, government realized that digital signature is now a shrinking term. There is a wider term. Now, people don't only sign documents digitally, they can also do it by other electronic methods. Now, for example, earlier if you wanted to withdraw money from a bank, what did you do? You signed a check, authenticated a check, gave it to the bank, it gave you the cash. Now, you put in your PIN number in an ATM. So, what is a PIN number? It's also signature, not a manual signature, but an electronic signature. It is not a digital signature. Digital signature is a signature which works on the technology of encryption, decryption, crypto system, etc. But here, all that is not done, but it's still a signature. So, government said now, we think that digital signature term doesn't include a lot of things which have to be brought under the purview of the Act. So, they replaced the term digital signatures by electronic signature in the entire Act, except at places where it meant digital signatures. Otherwise, wherever the term digital signature was written, it was replaced by electronic signatures. As I said, unless the term actually meant digital signatures only. For example, when the technology was being defined as a metric system, etc., there the term was still digital signatures because it directly meant digital signatures. But in different other places, it was replaced by the wider term, that is electronic signatures. So, electronic signature means authentication of any electronic record by a subscriber, again by means of an electronic technique, and where it is supposed to be specified in the second schedule, and it includes digital signature. So, which is a wider term? Electronic signature, and it includes digital signature. Even your retina scan these days, lot of companies are using a lot of scans, biometric retina scans at times to grant approvals. High flying technology is being used. All those are electronic signatures, and it includes digital signatures. Digital signature certificate, as we discussed, means a digital signature certificate under subsection 4 of section 35. The document which I said, which lists all the particulars of a digital signature. Who is the subscriber, what is the description of the private key, what is the description of the public key, everything is written in this particular certificate. It is known as a digital signature certificate. And then the new term also came, electronic signature certificate. It means electronic certificate issued under section 35 and includes digital signature certificate. And the next definition is certification practice statement. It means a statement issued by a certifying authority to specify the practices that the certifying authority employs in issuing electronic signature certificate. Now, one more term here has been referred to, certifying authority. As it was saying, that certifying authority is the body which is used, or which has got the which is supposed to issue the digital signature certificates. For example, we normally for our practice work such as filing of returns, etc., we buy digital signatures from certain certifying authorities. As I said, it could be Mudra, it could be TCS, it could be SIFI, etc. So, these are the different companies which are issuing digital signatures, and these are known as certifying authorities. That is, they certify that this certificate can be issued to this particular person. And the statement which specify the practices that the certifying authority employs is known as and that statement is known as certification practice statement. So, these are some definitions relating to digital signature, electronic signature, etc. Then subscriber. Subscriber means a person in whose name the electronic signature certificate is issued. And for our purposes, who is the subscriber, my friend? We have already discussed that 100 times already. Yes, the director of a company, partner of a firm, individual himself. Certifying authority means a person who has been granted a license to issue electronic signature certificate. See, the government of India has granted licenses to different certifying authorities to issue an electronic signature certificate. And then there is a term called controller. Now, there are different certifying authorities. The examples I was giving, there are different companies who have been given the responsibility of issuing digital or electronic signatures. So, now we need to have a watchdog body, that is a body which can keep control over the practices being followed by the certifying authority. The body whose objective is to ensure that good practices are followed by these entities, and that body is the controller of certifying authorities appointed under subsection 7 of section 17. Now, my friend, in this subject also, just like all the other subjects like law, income tax, etc., it's always advised that you write this section only if you actually remember it. If you don't remember it, don't write the incorrect section. There should be no guesswork in terms of sections. If you remember it, quote it. If you don't remember it, ignore it. But in this particular chapter, at times the questions have been asked by section numbers directly. For example, explain this is this under section this. So, in those cases it becomes important to retain the sections, otherwise you might actually get confused as to where has this question come from. So, these are some of the definitions which have been listed in section 1. As I said, we have only taken those definitions which help us to understand the different terms which are used for digital and electronic signatures. And for understanding these definitions, we have taken the example of information being converted from one form to a secretive form, then again to the normal form, and also being locked when it has been done. And now you can appreciate that this entire process is used when we are filing all the returns. For example, when I am filing the ROC returns, I am sending a particular form which has got certain data. Now, just imagine if I am sending this information to the registrar of companies, that is the ROC, via internet, and somebody in the way, somebody takes out this information, changes my data and sends wrong information to the ROC, it could be a problem. So, my information is encrypted. And then how would the ROC know that yes, this return has actually been signed by the director of the company? By affixing the right digital signatures, which have got the private key, and the corresponding public key would be available in the ROC database. If you have done work on ROC filings, you would appreciate that whenever a new director is or a new signatures are availed for any director, you need to register the digital signatures in the ROC site. You go to the site, you select the DIN number, you put in the details, and then you link or select the digital signatures and then upload it. So, now the ROC has that corresponding public key for this private key, and next time whenever a filing is done, it would verify that. So, the entire process is done in the digital signatures. That is a different thing. We just plug in the digital signatures and do the filing. We are not bothered much about what the process is, but next time do make sure that you just right click and try to find out some of these properties. So, these were some of the definitions which we have covered as part of section 1. Hello friend, let us now begin chapter 7, Information Technology Regulatory Issues. Within this chapter we will be covering, there are 4 different topics. First is Information Technology Act 2008. Then we will talk of the requirement of various authorities for system controls and audit, which is again becoming very important these days. Then we'll talk of a few standards and guidelines, and lastly we'll take up cyber forensic and cyber fraud investigation. So let's take up the first one, that is Information Technology Act 2008. To give you a brief on why the IT Act was introduced, it's become very prominent act these days, but why was the IT Act introduced and what was the scenario before the IT Act was introduced? If I take you back 20 years, how was the income tax and how was ROC filing done? I'm giving this example because this is what me and you can relate more to that. I'm sure you will be doing some income tax filings, some ROC filings in your office. How these being done now? If you are supposed to file an income tax return, most of the times you are filing the returns through e-filing method, that is automatic filing, automated filing of returns. Yes, there are still in few cases the manual returns are being filed, but gradually the move is towards filing of automated returns. That is, for companies we need to file, e-filing has to be done. For firms, for now even people who are doing tax audits, e-filing has to be done, and even for large individuals with salaries or income more than 10 lakhs. So the trend is towards e-filing of returns. But that was not the case 20 years back, that all the returns were filed manually. So now if the government thought that and similarly for ROC returns, I remember when we used to file the ROC returns, we used to, not even 20 years back, but that could be say even 10 to 15 years back, we used to stand up in long queues and with 2 annual returns in hand, and we used to manually deposit all those returns. So government thought that why not automate all these processes? Why not ensure that, why not have a system when the filing of returns can be done in an online method? Why not have a system of place where everything can be done electronically? Now to do that, there would be changes that had to be made in certain acts. Now for example, if we talk of Income Tax Act says, because the way it was drafted earlier, it would have said, if you go to find out the rules in Income Tax Act, it says that a copy of the balance sheet and profit and loss account have to be filed with the assessing officer, which meant that it has to be filed manually. Now you want to convert it into an electronic manner, then you are supposed to make changes in the Income Tax Act. Similarly, it says that a copy of the tax audit report has to be filed manually. If you are to change that, you would have to go to the act or the rules and make changes thereon. Similarly, for ROC, it would have been required to go to the Companies Act, and wherever it was written, the balance sheet has to be filed, the annual return has to be filed with the registrar of companies. It would have been required to change that. Now it will be done electronically. Similarly, Service Tax Act, similarly the VAT or the CST, and so many places such changes would have been required. So government thought that why not, instead of going to each and every act and writing that wherever anything is required to be done manually, why not have, now it can be done electronically, why not have a single act which says that all these activities can be done electronically? That was the idea behind the IT Act, to facilitate electronic filing of records, to facilitate the filing of records to be done in an electronic manner, which were till now mostly be done in a manual manner. Why was the requirement of electronic filing? Why do we need an act to say all these things? Because otherwise there could be so many disputes. Now when we file an income tax return with the assessing officer, it is required to be signed manually. Now we are using digital signatures, and so how do we ensure that a uniform system is being used by everyone? How do we ensure that some technology is prescribed which can be used by everyone? So for prescribing that technology, for example digital signatures, again something has to be written somewhere. Some act has to say that digital signatures will be used instead of the manual system of signatures. So which was that act which included that? Again, the IT Act. Also the lot of electronic commerce started a few years back, that is the e-commerce, buying and selling over internet. if there was no e-commerce, what was the procedure? I have to buy something from you, there was a documented procedure. A purchase order is being given to one person. He delivers the materials, you receive the material, then you need to make the payment. And what is the, and there has to be an agreement between the two parties which states what are the terms and conditions, how the payment would be made. Now everything is been done on internet. There might not always be signed or hard copy documents. So there could be disputes, there could be problems in that. So how do you ensure that lot of things are covered, this e-commerce is facilitated? Again, you need to have everything written in an act. That was the IT Act. So the very objective of IT Act, why the IT Act was implemented was to facilitate all these things for your, I would suggest that for your convenience or for your, for making it easier for you to remember all these things, always try to relate with the examples of income tax and ROC filings being done now and the way they were done manually. And I will also keep on giving you these examples of income tax and ROC filings because this is something you and me can relate more with. So whenever I will give an example of, in fact, I will try to relate all the sections in this particular act, and you have to remember a lot of sections. I try to relate lot of these sections to the ROC filing or the income tax filings which are being done so often by all CA firms or consulting firms these days. So that is the brief background of why the IT Act was brought in and why, how was it important or required to ensure that graduation, that the change can be made from manual system of filings, manual system of records to electronic system of filings and records. That was the logic behind the bringing of this particular act, that is the Information Technology Act. The IT Act was enacted on 17th May 2000. Now this act in fact earlier was referred to as IT Act 2000. We will see that why was and how was it changed to 2008, but primarily it was enacted in May 2000. It was enacted initially or primarily for following reasons: to provide legal recognition for transactions carried out by means of electronic data interchange and other communication commonly referred to as e-commerce, which involves use of alternatives to paper-based methods of communication and storage of information. When there was no e-commerce, everything was paper-based. In exchange of information, there were letters which were sent, there were letters which were received, certain documents were received. Now that has moved on to everything electronic. You send emails, you get emails. You might, in fact, the entire exchange of entire order could be executed on an email. I ask for quotation from 5 parties, all the 5 parties send quotation online. Out of these 5 parties, I select one party. I send an email that you are selected. He does the work for me, or he provides me certain things, and based on that I say okay, this is fine. That he might raise me an electronic invoice and I might make an electronic payment. So everything is done on the internet or through the method of electronic data interchange or other aspects, and this in totality is referred to as e-commerce. So this electronic commerce was the main reason for bringing out this for this particular act to be implemented. Similarly, to facilitate electronic filing of documents with the government agencies, as I said, income tax returns, TDS returns, VAT returns, service tax returns, ROC filings, all these were facilitated with this act. Had this act not been in place, the government would have been required to make changes to hundreds of acts which are covering hundreds of acts and rules which are covering all these aspects of filings. Instead of going and making changes to all the acts, you brought one single act which says that all these things which are being done manually can now be done electronically subject to these conditions being fulfilled. Otherwise, they would have gone to hundreds of acts and rules and made changes everywhere in every section and every subsection and clause where it was mentioned that something is required to be done manually, filing of record has to be done manually, storage of data has to be done manually. Everywhere they would have to replace the word manual with electronic. So, better option, have a separate act and write wherever or in any law these things are to be done manually, now they can be done electronic, a better option. Thirdly, the third primary reason for enacting this law, to further amend the Indian Penal Code, the Indian Evidence Act, Bankers Books Evidence Act, RBI Act, etc., etc. So, it was required to make changes to those acts also. So, these were the three reasons primarily for which the IT Act, as I said, was enacted first in year 2000. And when India enacted this law, it became the 12th nation in the world to adopt cyber laws by passing this act. So, that wasn't too early, but that wasn't too late also. When the IT Act was introduced, it was the first information technology legislation introduced in India. So, you might think that 2000 was a little late for doing these things, but then better late than never. The IT Act is based on the model law of e-commerce adopted by the United Nations body, that is UNCITRAL, that it gives a model law on e-commerce, and that has been adopted by for the implementation of the IT Act. So, this was a bit historical perspective or bit of history behind why the Act was implemented. The IT Act 2000 was then amended significantly by passing out the passing of the Information Technology Amendment Act 2008, and since then is IT Act has been referred to as an IT Act 2008. So, that is why now the common name is IT Act 2008. There were certain very important changes which were brought by this act. When the act was or finalized or enacted in 2000, yes, it was primarily done to facilitate recording e-commerce, but gradually the government realized that there is more to IT than simply facilitating e-commerce and simply facilitating filing of records. Now, a lot of things have come in picture which are required to be captured, and for this lot of changes were brought in the IT Act 2008. Broad reasons or broad changes for that were: the amended act casts responsibility on our bodies corporate to protect sensitive personal information. Now, organizations have got lot of information with them, especially with the advent of BPOs and such companies which are holding so important data. There was a requirement of a law to ensure compliances with certain policies and procedures to ensure that this data is securely held. Now, the BPOs, for example, BPOs in India could be containing sensitive information about citizens of US. So, or any other country. So, that information becomes very important. So, IT Act was brought in to govern that. It recognizes and punishes offences by companies and individuals for actions such as sending offensive messages, stealing computer resources, unauthorized access to computer resources, identity theft, cheating by personating using computers, etc., etc., cyber terrorism. Now, these things were not thought about in 2000 year, and next 7 or 8 years these things became so important. In fact, if this particular clause of sending offensive messages, although we will cover it a little later, a couple of years back when a prominent leader died, a couple of girls posted a message on their Facebook account, and they were arrested for sending offensive messages through computer device. It became an outrage in the entire country, but this act was actually used to arrest 2 people for sending offensive messages through a computer, and that was done through their Facebook account. So, such is the importance. That was right or not, we are not going to discuss that here, but yes, that is the power of this law these days. With the advent of technology, these things have become so important now. Similarly, if you are accessing somebody else's computer, you are hacking somebody else's computer, the laws were introduced to govern that. Lot of penalties and fines were introduced, even imprisonment has been introduced in so many cases. Similarly, impersonating somebody's identity. So often these days, two people are chatting on that on the internet and taking somebody else's identity. These things have been now there are penalties and fines for that. Again, even imprisonment for these things. Yes, obviously there are certain these are more left to the courts to decide, but provisions are there. It also provides for extensive powers to police and statutory authorities. Now, a lot of powers were given to them which were not available earlier. So, if you see in all larger cities, we have these days we have so prominent cyber cells which are operating in police departments. For instance, the Delhi police has got such a well knit and such a well organized cyber cell department which is operating. Similarly, it has provisions for adjudication related to data protection and privacy, and provides for criminal prosecution, etc. for the same. So, these are some of the reasons why the Act had to be amended. In the year 2000, maybe nobody thought that sending a offensive message on a Facebook can be captured through this. Now it was possible. If there was no law, then anybody can use these things for doing any activities. So there was a law brought in. Maybe in 2000 nobody thought that there could be identity theft on the internet. Nobody thought that there could be requirement of or there could be cyber terrorism, for example, attacking somebody's website. Now that happens so often. Lot of government websites are so frequently attacked by people who want to cause damage. So there has to be a law to capture that. There was nothing written specifically in the Indian Penal Code or the IPC, which is otherwise used for dealing with criminal activities. So those legislations were brought in this particular act. So that was the broad reason for bringing in certain amendments to the act in 2008, and after that it was generally referred to as an IT Act 2008. Along with the act, there are certain rules which are issued. Although in this particular chapter these rules have not been elaborated much, but we should at least know what all rules are there. First of all, there is the Information Technology Reasonable Security Practices and Procedures and Sensitive Personal Data or Information Rule, that is 2011. Then we have Information Technology Intermediary Guidelines Rules 2011, and then we have Information Technology Electronic Service Delivery Rules 2011. So these are the three rules which have been issued along with the overall act, that is IT Act 2008. Objectives of the act. We have already touched upon the objectives when we defined why this act is in place. Now let's have the detailed gist or detailed list of all the objectives of the act. To grant legal recognition for transactions carried out by means of electronic data interchange and other means of electronic communication, commonly referred to as e-commerce. We have just discussed that. To give legal recognition to digital signatures for authentication of any information or matter which requires authentication under any law. As I said, any law where filing has to be done manually, somebody has to sign it. If the balance sheet of a director of a balance sheet of a company has to be filed with the registrar of companies, the director was supposed to sign it. How can you file it without any responsible person taking authority for the same, taking responsibility for the same and signing it? So it was signed by the directors of the company. A return for partnership had to be submitted. It was supposed to be signed by a partner of the firm. So now, since these signatures were done manually to authenticate these documents, now if the requirement moved from manual authentication to electronic authentication, you required some technology to do that. And that technology was digital signatures. Digital signatures means instead of manually signing, now the director or a partner or a karta or individual himself, anybody who is signing a particular document is signing it in an electronic manner. He is authenticating, he is affixing his signatures. He is affixing his signatures not manual but electronic, and these are referred to as digital signatures. So again, if you wanted to implement a system of digital signatures, either the government would have been required to go to all the acts and find out the word signature in there, and whenever there was a requirement of manual signature, replace it with electronic signature. Better option, have a single act which does all that. Then facilitate electronic filing of documents with government departments. We have said that. To facilitate electronic storage of data. Now earlier what all the returns were made in a manual manner, there were hard copies. Now have you ever seen a hard copy for a ROC return? No, lot of people don't even print them. There are soft copies. If you have to make an annual return, there is a particular soft copy in place that can be digitally signed, everything can be electronic filed. So lot of data is in electronic form. It has been facilitated that this data can be stored electronically. Better example, a lot of data of organizations stays within an ERP or an information system, then it has been allowed to be done in that way. It is not necessary to keep a printed record of everything. If an income tax officer comes to an organization and says, where is your data? You can say my data is my accounting system, say Tally, or my ERP, and it is all stored there. He cannot say that why have you not kept everything in a printed form? That is not required. Now even the authorities understand that data can be stored electronically, and this act was primarily done to facilitate that the storage of data can be done in an electronic manner. Then to give legal sanction and facilitate electronic fund transfers between banks and financial institutions. Very, very important part. These days it has become so common for everybody to transfer funds in an electronic manner. You need to go to your account, use the NEFT or RTGS facility and transfer funds to some other account. So that was required. The law had to be required to amend that. Otherwise, it was written in the law there has to be a negotiable instrument which has to be given by one person to another person, and the entire process was detailed in different laws such as the Negotiable Instrument Acts, etc. So this particular law then allowed the electronic transfer of funds between banks, and which has made our lives so easy these days. Then recognition for keeping of books of accounts by bankers in electronic form, and amend the IPC, Evidence Act, Bankers Act, etc., etc. Lot of other acts were required to be have been amended with the help of this particular act. So these are some of the objectives of the act, which, as I said, primarily revolve around facilitating e-commerce, facilitating digital signature, facilitating filing of documents, facilitating storage of data, enabling fund transfers, and then books of accounts by bankers, and amending a lot of other acts. So these are some of the key objectives of this act. Then the applicability of the act. This act extends to whole of India and also applies to any contravention of offence committed outside by any person. Also applies to offence or intervention committed outside any person if such act involves a computer system or a network located within India. So that is the applicability of this particular act. Now we move on to the next chapter in this particular topic. Now when I am saying chapter, I am referring to the chapter within the IT Act. This IT Act, like any other act, has been divided into a few parts, and these parts are the chapters. So this particular chapter 2 has got two important sections, section 3 and section 3A, and it talks about the authentication of electronic records. Now, as I said, the documents were being submitted manually earlier. So now the government wanted that the electronic submission should be allowed. They had two options. One, they would have gone to every act which was known, made the changes in that particular act. Another option, they legalized that entire filing or signing of electronic records in this particular act. They chose the second option. So they had to grant recognition. If it was nowhere written that now electronic records can be signed electronically, there would have been confusion and cases being filed, as there would have been no exception to the same. But since this was written and to avoid the confusion, to avoid the suits being filed, people getting confused, the government introduced a section in the IT Act and said that the electronic records can be signed electronically, but subject to fulfillment of few conditions. So, the manual signature, so the legal recognition was given to the digital signatures and electronic signatures. Had this section not been there, it would not have been possible to legalize. So, authentication of electronic records was legalized or given legal recognition through this section. This chapter, that is chapter 2, gives legal recognition to the authentication of electronic records by electronic signatures and provides the conditions subject to which these records may be authenticated by affixing electronic signatures. So, let us take the two sections which fall under this. First is or let us first understand the methodology of which is followed, and it is very similar to what we have just studied in the example I gave you before the definitions. That methodology has been written in this section. First we will understand this section and then we will write and see the text of this section. First let us understand what this section says. First, the two steps are followed which will be explained in the exact quote of this section. First, the electronic record is converted into a message digest by using a mathematical function known as a hash function, which digitally freezes the electronic record, thus ensuring the integrity of the content of the communication contained in the record. Now, what the digital signature does is converts the message, converts the electronic record into some other message digest using a function known as a hash function. And what the hash function does, it freezes the record. That is, once it has been converted to something else, no modification can be made without disturbing the hash result. Any tampering with the contents of the signature or with the contents of the electronic record will immediately invalidate the digital signatures. So, if you see, if you have a signed an electronic record with a digital signature, if you do any tampering, that particular signature will be invalidated. So, you need to so this particular method is followed to convert the electronic record into a message digest, and by using a hash function. And what the hash function does, this actually ensures the integrity of the content by freezing the record. Then secondly, now we have record has been converted into some form, it has been frozen, that part is done. But since I have to send this information over the internet, I need to tell them that this information is coming from this person. So, we need to sign, and the identity of the person has to be authenticated. So, secondly, the identity of the person affixing the signature is authenticated by the use of a private key which attaches itself to the digest and which can be verified by anybody who has the public key corresponding to the private key. So, there is a message digest, that is a shorter form of the main message, and another key is attached to this. And now, who can verify this key? Person who has got the corresponding public key. Let us assume in our case, this message is a file which is being sent to ROC, it has been converted into a digest, it has been affixed with the signatures of a director of the company, and when we send it to the ROC, the corresponding public signatures are available with the ROC. That is the process which is followed. This will enable to verify whether the electronic record is retained intact or has been tampered with since it was affixed with the digital signatures. It will also enable a person who has a public key to identify the originator of the message. So, two things can be done: the originator can be identified, it can be ensured that this the hash function which has, or the digest which has been generated, it would ensure that the when it reaches the ROC can check that the message, if again converted to the digest, would match with the hash digest which we have already received as part of the transmission, and this can be verified. So, this entire process is followed for authentication of electronic records. Now, let us understand the text of these sections. The first is section 3, that is, the name of this section is authentication of electronic records, but we can extend the name of this section to authentication of electronic records by using a digital signature. Why I am saying by using a digital signature? Because we will see when the act was amended, section 3A was introduced, which talked about electronic records being authenticated by the electronic signatures, which is a wider term. This section still concentrates on the digital signatures. That is why I said in the entire act the word digital signatures has been replaced by the electronic signatures, except the cases where its meaning is directly digital signatures. So, in this section 3 it has not been replaced. Subject to the provisions of this section, just like any other confusing law language, again it starts with the subject to the provisions of this section. Any subscriber may authenticate and record electronic record by affixing the digital signatures. So, legal recognition has been given that subject to provisions of this section, any subscriber can now authenticate a record by affixing his signature. This activity has been legally recognized by the Government of India by this line. The authentication of electronic record shall be affected by the use of asymmetric crypto system and hash function, which envelop and transform the initial record into another record. So, the government did not simply stop by writing a line, it said yes, you can now authenticate the electronic record by using a digital signature, but you are supposed to use a specific technology. What technology? You are supposed to use the asymmetric crypto system and the hash function, and what will they do? They will envelop and transform the initial record into another electronic record. And if the first record is tampered, it can be seen from the second record that the result of the first record is not matching, and it can be easily found out if the record has been tampered. For the purposes of this subsection, hash function means an algorithm mapping or translating one sequence of bits into another, generally known as the hash result, such that an electronic record yields the same hash result every time the algorithm is executed with the same electronic record as its input. So, if I am sending, let us assume I am sending a file and a hash result has been converted. So, any time we convert the same file, the result would be the same. So, if any changes have been made to this file, and this file reaches the recipient, and he compares that this is the result which I have got earlier and this is the result which I am getting now, there is a difference. He would know that the original result has been or the original file has been tampered. Any person by the use of public key of the subscriber can verify the electronic record. So, this section gave legal recognition to the authentication of records. Another line was added, the private key and public key are unique to the subscriber and constitute a functioning key pair. So, they are unique to the subscriber. So, section 3A, section 3 brought about the authentication of the electronic records, but this section was focused on the digital signatures. Now, when the electronic signatures came into relevance, one option could have been to change the entire section, but this section specifically talked about the technology which is used in digital signatures. So, we could not simply strike off the term digital signatures and replace it with the term electronic signature. That was not possible. So, there was what had to be done. So, another section was introduced, that is section 3A, which particularly talks about the wider term, that is electronic signature. A subscriber may authenticate any electronic record by such electronic signature or technique which is considered reliable and specified in the second schedule. For digital signatures, the Act said in section 3, you can use digital signatures subject to the fact that a symmetric crypto system and hash function are used, and then they elaborated those points. In section 3A, it is saying that now you can also use any other electronic signature, but it should be reliable and specified in the second schedule. That second schedule is not directly a part of your prescribed syllabus, which so will not take up here, but you can assume it to be a list, or just like the rules or schedules we have in any other act. This also has a got of a set of technologies which can be used for electronic signatures. So, this should be reliable and they should be specified in the second schedule. It is very important to understand the difference between the two sections, because students at times get confused in the examination whether it is talking about the digital signatures or electronic signatures. So, section 3 talks about digital and 3A talks about electronic signature. There are certain other conditions which are given. Now, we have said that the electronic signature should be considered reliable. When can it be considered reliable? That has been elaborated. For the purposes of this section, any electronic signature or authentication technique shall be considered reliable if it meets the following conditions. So, there were two conditions in section 3A. One, it would be reliable. Second, it should be specified in the second schedule. And to define reliability, certain points have been mentioned. A signature, a technique can be considered reliable if the signature creation data or the authentication data are within the context in which they are used linked to the signatory or authenticator and no other person. They are linked. Linked means it can be directly mapped to the person. Whenever you apply for a digital signatures or whenever you apply for digital signatures, don't you submit any documents? Yes, you do. As part of the signature application, you fill up a form. Along with that, you put the PAN card of the say director of the company and ID proof and address proof. ID proof, yes, could be the PAN card again, and then a photograph. Why are we doing that? Because that would identify that these signatures are linked to this particular person. You can exactly find out that whose signatures are these. And these documents, obviously if you have a PAN card, ID proof, address proof, so your identity is linked to the signatures. So, it is very important that the signature creation data and authentication data are linked to the signatory and no other person. Next condition, the signature creation data or authentication data both were at the time of signing under the control of the signatory or authenticator and no other person. So, the data has to be in control of the person. Any alteration to signature made after such signature has been made is detectable, and any alteration to the information made after its authentication by electronic signature is identifiable. So, both alteration to electronic signatures can be identified, the alteration to the information can also be identified. Both things should be identifiable. And then last, it fulfills any other conditions which could be prescribed. So, there are a set of conditions which have been given to ensure that the electronic signatures are valid, to give recognition to the electronic signatures. So, in this particular chapter 2 of this particular act, there are two relevant sections, section 3 and section 3A. As I said, section 3 talks about giving recognition to signing of electronic records by digital signature technology, and section 3A gives recognition to signing of records by any electronic signature, and it has also got a specified conditions which have to be met. Then we have chapter 3 which talks about electronic governance, sections 4 to 10A. Section 4. Now, I have drawn a brief chart or brief table to understand what all is primarily contained in these sections. there have to be, this table shall help us to remember 4 or 5 similar sections, but if you have to attempt a question, then that you have to read the entire text which would be given to you in the notes which accompany the videos. So, if you see the headings of this table, there is a section number coming in, then it talks about the section heading, that is name of the section, then it talks about it says where any law requires that, and lastly it says the requirement shall be satisfied. So, there are almost 5 sections which go by this method. So, to remember these 5 sections or to understand these sections, you have to read the table in this way only. Let us take the first one, section 4, section heading legal recognition of electronic records. Now, we said that in the earlier section we gave legal recognition to the digital signatures and electronic signatures, but first of all we need to give legal recognition to electronic records themselves. So, how do we give that? With the help of this section. Where any law requires that any information or matter should be in typewritten or printed form. Where any law requires. If this line wouldn't have been there, or this section would not have been there, we would have to go to different acts, different laws, and all those different laws and acts, we would have to write that if something has to be done manually, now it can be done electronically. But now we wrote a common line. Where any law requires that any information or matter should be in typewritten or printed form, the requirement shall be satisfied if it is in electronic form. So, we have generalized the entire conversion from manual to electronic records has been generalized. All the laws, any law in time being enforced has been covered here, obviously except the exceptions or which have already been given in the beginning of the act. Any law requires. So, if for example, if the income tax law and income tax rules would have said that the documents have to be in printed form, or it has to be in a form has to be printed, and then that printed form has to be filed. So, now we can have electronic form. So, the income tax return which was earlier in hard copy can now be a soft copy form. Similarly, ROC annual returns the annual returns which were filed with the ROC, earlier they were in printed form, now we can have a PDF file for the same. So, any form which was to be any information or matter that was required to be in typewritten form, now it can be in electronic form. So, with one section all the different laws have been covered. Section 5. Now, there is a hard copy form, we already said, somebody had to sign it. Now, we need to give recognition that these signatures which were being done manually can now be done electronically. So, that recognition has to be given. Section 5, legal recognition of electronic signatures. Where any law requires that an information or matter should be authenticated by affixing the signature of any person, the requirement shall be deemed to be satisfied if it is authenticated by means of electronic signatures. Where any law requires. The income tax law would have said that you have to sign the return and submit before the income tax authorities. The ROC, the company's law would have said you have to sign the annual return and submit before the registrar. Now, that signature had to be converted from manual to electronic signature, so recognition was required to be given. So, now this section says that where any law requires that any information or matter should be authenticated by ways of affixing the signature of any person, the requirement shall be satisfied if it is authenticated by means of electronic signatures. So, this one particular section has enabled the signatures being done electronically in all the acts and all the places where it is required to be done. manually. Now, the sections 3 and 3A, probably you might be wondering that section 3 and 3A and the section 5 look similar. In 3 and 3A, we said authentication can be done by two technologies, digital signature and electronic signature, if following conditions are met. Here we are saying that where any law requires that something can be done manually, it can be done electronically, it can be signed electronically, but electronic signature requires that certain technologies should be used, and those technologies are given as part of section 3 and 3A. So, 5 says if you are signing manually, you can sign electronic, but how, what technologies, what methods? Those methods and technologies are given in section 3 and 3A. So, this is section 5 which talks about legal recognition of electronic signatures. Now, the signatures were recognized legally by the government. Section 6, use of electronic records and signatures in government and its agencies. Where any law requires that filing of any form, application or other documents, issue or grant of any license or permit, receipt or payment in government offices and its agencies can be done in any manner, the requirement shall be satisfied if it is done by way of electronic form. Continuing with the example of ROC, first we said hard copy form, now we can have electronic form. On the form we had to do manual signatures, now we can have electronic signatures. Now we need to file this form also. So, where the filing of form was required manually, you have to go to the income tax officer or you have to go to the registrar of companies, get a acknowledgement stamp on your form and then come back. Now, that can be done electronically. Now, you do not need to go to the income tax office, you can file the return on the income tax website. Similarly, you do not need to go to the ROC office, you can file the return on their website. So, this section has facilitated that. Also, issue or grant of any license or permit, if that had to be done manually, it can be done electronically. For example, how many these days service tax registration, when you apply for service tax form and you receive the ST2 certificate, do you get a printed copy of that? They do not even send these days. A mail would come to your ID and says this is the ST2 and now you are registered under the service tax. If you insist, they will send you a hard copy, but most of the times they do not even send that. So, wherever any document had to be sent, had to be issued manually, it can be done electronically. Similarly, payments, wherever any manual payments were required to be done or receipts were to be issued, it can be done electronically. If now a lot of banks do not even accept manual tax payments. If you go for payments of TDS or self-assessment taxes, especially for companies, etc., the banks do not even accept manual payments. So, all these things are now electronically done. All the payments of taxes, be it service tax or VAT or income tax, self-assessment tax, TDS, advance tax, whatever, all these things can be done electronically, because this particular section says that where any law requires that filing of any form, application or documents, issues of grants or licenses, receipts and payments, all these things were required to be done in any form. The requirement shall be satisfied if these are done in electronic form. So, legal recognition has been given to lot of these aspects by this section. Then, retention of electronic documents, section 7. Where any law requires that documents, records or information are to be retained for any specific period, requirement shall be satisfied if they are retained in electronic form. Now, I know you would be aware that all different laws have requirements for retention of documents. Income tax says that documents have to be retained for a specific period. The Companies Act says the documents have to be retained for a specific period. But that does not mean that now you need to have printed copies of everything. You can retain the information in electronic form. For example, you have a transaction processing system in your organization. You have a TPS, you are simply you have a point of sales machine and you are giving invoices to the customers and everything is recorded in your transaction processing system. Now, the income tax officer, if he visits your premises, he cannot say that why have you not kept the hard copies of everything. You say it's in the systems. For example, I have a shop in which I am selling, say I have a chemist shop, a chain of chemist shops, and I am issuing invoices from my point of sales machine. And tomorrow any income tax person visits my premises and says, why are not all invoices kept in hard copies? I don't require that. I'll say everything is the systems. You need how much sales have been made. You just check the systems. You'll get item wise, value wise details from the system. Why do I need to keep a printout of everything in my system? My entire office or my entire shop will be filled with this printouts. I don't need that, and nor can he question you on that, because where any retention was supposed to be done for any specified period in any law, in any form, now the requirement shall be satisfied if this is done or these documents are retained in electronic form. So, again manual activity has been replaced by an electronic activity. Then publication of rules, regulations, etc. in electronic gazette, where any law requires, section 8, 4, 5, 6, 7 and now 8, where any law requires that publication of any rule, regulation, order, bylaw, notification or other matter is to be made in the official gazette, requirement shall be satisfied if it is published in electronic form. Now, my friend, what is a gazette? You will know that whenever any notification in income tax, service tax or any rules or anything is published, it comes out in the Gazette of India. It's a newspaper that is to be printed. But now these days, instead of the newspaper, a lot of things are coming on the website. Service tax keeps on issuing notifications every second day, and it is placed on the website of the service tax, and that is accepted by everybody. They don't need to publish in the official, in the printout hard copy form. They might do, but this is good enough. So, where anything was supposed to be published in the official gazette, that is the official newspaper of the government, the same can be done if it is published in electronic form. So, this section again gives electronic recognition to an activity. So, these 5 sections starting from 4, that is starting from section 4, that is 4, 5, 6, 7 and 8, they translate an an activity which was being done in a manual form and give recognition to the electronic form. Section 4 to have a recap, 4 legal recognition of electronic records, wherever anything record was being supposed to be made in a typewritten or a printed form, it can be done electronically. 5 legal recognition of electronic signatures, wherever manual signatures were required, now we can have electronic signatures. 6 wherever manual filing was supposed to be done, manual taxes were supposed to be paid or manual licenses were supposed to be issued, it can be done in electronic form. 7 retention of documents, that is wherever the documents were required to be retained in manual form, we can do electronically. And last, wherever the publication of any information, rules, etc. was supposed to be done in the official gazette, the same can be done in the electronic gazette. So, these are the 5 sections which can be remembered in this way, that is something which has been done manually has now been converted to something electronic. Another section which is related to this is section 7A, audit of documents in electronic form, wherein any law for the time being in force says that there is a provision for audit of documents, record or information, then that provision should also be applicable for audit of documents, records or information processed and maintained in electronic form. So, whenever any law required that audit has to be done, and it said that audit has to be done of the books of accounts, for example, now those books of accounts would also mean the electronic books of accounts. We are not saying that audit would only cover the printed journals, vouchers, cash books, bank books, but at the same time the audit would also cover the cash books, bank books, journals, etc., which are there in electronic form. So, that is the audit of documents has to be in electronic form. So, this section 7A talks particularly about that. Moving on, there is another section 9. Now, section 6, 7 and 8, we said, when this talked about section 6, 7 and 8, we said that 6 said the electronic records, all these things which were done manually can be done in electronic form. 7 said that they have to be retained in electronic form, and 8 said that things have to be published in the electronic form. But section 9 was introduced to specifically say that although things can be done in electronic form, but they cannot give anybody a right to insist that things should only be accepted in electronic form. Nobody can insist that. We are saying that yes, government is saying that we will accept the taxes in electronic form, but tomorrow nobody can insist and say I will not pay in manual form because you have written in the act. We are saying yes, we will accept electronic form, but we are not saying that manual things will not be done from now. Nobody can challenge that. So, they specifically inserted a section for the same. So, tomorrow anybody might come and say now you can not do manual activity or at all. That should not be the case. Nothing contained in section 6, 7 and 8 shall confer a right upon any person to insist, that is to enforce, that any ministry or department of the central government or the state government or any authority or body established by any law or controlled or funded by the central or state government should accept, issue, create, return and preserve any document in the form of electronic records or effect any monetary transaction in electronic form. You cannot force the government bodies to do the same. You cannot say that you have said that this particular that you will issue a license in electronic form, you can now not issue in manual form. You cannot say that, because the government has said that yes, this section is for your benefit, but you cannot use this section against us only. You cannot say that now electronic activities can only be done, manual activities are not allowed at all. That is not possible. So, specifically section 9 was inserted to find out or to prevent anybody from making such a claim. So, you cannot, so this section was inserted specifically to ensure that a right is not given to anybody to insist that document should be accepted in electronic form. Section 10, power to central government to make rules. Just like in most of the acts which are formed by an act of parliament, the power to formulate certain rules is often given to the central government. The very logic is that you cannot have parliament enacting rules or making the rules for activities which are not very broad in nature. Yes, the parliament can sit and formulate an act, but parliament at times it will be too tedious of a process if parliament has to approve and make all the rules. So, that has been given to the central government. So, what all activities have been given to the central government? The central government, for the purposes of this act by rules, prescribe the type of electronic signature. So, tomorrow if a new technology comes in which is required to be added to the list of electronic signatures, you don't want the parliament to sit and debate before the same is added. The central government will add it to the list of electronic signatures. The manner and format in which the signature shall be affixed. So, what technology has to be used, what activity has to be done, that format will be again can be prescribed by the central government. The manner or procedure which facilitates identification of the person affixing the electronic signature. If I give an example, some time back, when the digital signatures were being prepared initially, it was possible that you talk to a vendor, for example, who provides digital signatures. That vendor would be an agent of one of the certifying authorities, and he asked you that, and you asked him that I want a digital signature. He said, okay, fine, take a printout from the site, put in the photo of the director, put in the requisite documents, get them signed, do a scan and mail it to me. That will be good enough. But some time back the law was changed. Now the government said no, this procedure requires to be changed for identification of persons, will not take these scanned documents. So now what happens, the form has to be signed, physically signed. Instead of a scan, a hard copy has to be sent to the required office which will generate the certificate. So that procedure has to be changed. Now scan is not good enough, you need to actually submit a original hard copy of the same, so that all the things, the documents are more clearly identified. And for this change, it was not required that Parliament approve this change, it was simply changed by the government by making changes in the rules, because it had power to do so under section 10. Then control processes and procedures to ensure adequate integrity, security and confidentiality of electronic records or payments. So whatever rules it wants to implement to ensure that the electronic payments or records are safe and secure, the government can do that. And any other matter which is necessary to give legal effect to electronic signatures. So all these powers rest with the central government. So to once again, let us go to the list of powers. The central government may, for the purposes of this act, by rules, and that is common for all the laws. If you have to implement the act, you need to have a set of rules, and these rules the government can prescribe different things, such as the type of electronic signature, the manner and format in which signatures shall be affixed, the manner or procedure which facilitates identification of the person affixing the signature, the control processes and procedures to ensure integrity, confidentiality and safety, and any other matter which is necessary to give legal effect to electronic signatures. So these are the these are different powers which have been given to the central government to make certain rules, and this is all part of the section 10. The last part of chapter 3, that is electronic governance, is the section 10A, which says validity of contracts formed through electronic means. Now my friend, these days lot of contract formation is done electronically. For example, I am a consultant or an internal auditor for a company. The CFO of a company says, he talks to me and says, I am planning to get fixed asset verification done from you. So can you send me, or I am sending a mail to you, I will specify what are the details, I give you the list of my assets, I will give you the location of the assets, and I will ask, then you can submit me a quotation. I get the details of the assets, the locations, and I send him a quotation on the through email. I say, based on the number of assets you have and this work, I quote a fees of rupees 1 lakh plus service tax plus expenses. I simply write a mail. He writes back a mail to me, he says, okay, we are fine with the quotation, the timelines are fine, why don't you start the work from next week? I do the work for 2 weeks or 3 weeks, I complete the assignment, I make a report, the report is also on PowerPoint presentation, I mail it to him. We discuss the report on the projector, and then when I submit my invoice, he says, look, the contract was never formed. Did we sign any document? I would say no. He says that the contract was never formed, because unless a document has been signed, how can you formalize a contract? Now I would say the entire procedure happened on emails. I sent you a mail, you asked me, you sent me the details, I gave you the quotation, you approved it, we did the work, we shared all the documentation, and you are saying that no contract has been signed. This is unjustified. So to ensure that these things do not come up, this section was introduced. Now this section didn't say that any such contract will be accepted directly, but that would have been lot of complication. But this section said that any such contract which has been formalized in electronic manner will not be simply rejected for the reason that electronic manner has been followed. We are not saying that only because the electronic method has been followed, this will deem to be invalid. No, but we are saying that we are not accepting it directly. Had the had it been written in this particular section that every electronic contract shall be accepted, it would have been too controversial. So, it was read that simply because it has been done in electronic form, you cannot reject the same. That was put in this section. Where in a contract formation, the communication of proposals, the acceptance of proposals, revocation of proposals and acceptances are expressed in electronic form or by means of an electronic record, such contracts shall not be deemed to be unenforceable solely on the ground that such electronic form or means was used. So, we are saying that only because of the reason that electronic methods have been used, we cannot say that this contract is unenforceable. That would not be right. So, instead of accepting all the contracts, a better option has been given, that it has been said that simply because things have been done in electronic form, you cannot reject the entire transaction, and that is what has been covered under section 10A, that is validity of contracts through electronic means. So, these sections 4 to 10A are part of the chapter 3 of this act, that is electronic governance. So, my friend, the next chapter as covered in this topic is chapter 5, which talks about secure electronic records and secure digital signatures. The relevant sections in this topic are 14, 15 and 16. So, there are 3 sections which have been covered as part of this particular chapter, chapter 5, secure electronic records and secure digital signatures. You must be wondering that we covered chapter 3 and then we are covering chapter 5. In fact, prior to the period when the syllabus was revised, there were lot of other chapters within this topic, Information Technology Act, but now with the change in syllabus, lot of those chapters or parts have been removed. So, there might be certain missing chapters, but don't worry, those are not missing from here, those have been excluded from the prescribed syllabus. So, there are 3 sections which we will cover in this section 14, 15 and 16. Let's start with the first one, that is section 14. Section 14 talks about secure electronic record. That is, it defines that when can a record or an electronic record termed to be secure. When can we say that an electronic record is secure enough? It provides that where any security procedure has been applied to an electronic record at a specific point of time, then such record shall be deemed to be a secure electronic record from that particular point to the point of verification. So, we are saying that whenever we want a record to be called as a secure electronic record, it is essential that a specific security procedure should be applied to the electronic record at a certain point of time. And from the time when this procedure has been applied to the time this record is being verified, in that duration the record shall be called as a secure electronic record. The security procedure which we have referred to in section 14, in fact that procedure has been elaborated in section. Here we are only saying that you need to apply a security procedure to call an electronic record as a secure record. What is that procedure? That procedure has been defined as part of section 16. So, we will just take it up after we do section 15. Section 15 talks about the electronic signature being secure. We have just done when can a electronic record be termed as secure. Now, we will see when can an electronic signature be termed as secure. An electronic signature shall be deemed to be secure signature if the signature creation data at the time of affixing the signature was under the exclusive control of the signatory and no other person. Which means we will say that this electronic signature, for example, digital signature, it is a part of the wider term electronic signature. So, when can I say that the digital signature is secure? I will say with this digital signature is secure if such signature was in the exclusive control or exclusive control of the signatory at the time of affixing. So, if it was lying with somebody else and who was not its authorized user, then this will not be termed as a secure electronic signature. So, the first condition is that the signature creation data at the time of affixing the signature, that is when the signature are being done, it should be under the control of the signatory. And the second condition is that the signature creation data was stored and affixed in such manner as may be prescribed. That is, you need to follow the procedure for affixing the signature creation data. So, when these two conditions are met, in that case we can say that yes, this electronic signature is secure. So, now we have made both the things secure. We have said when can an electronic record be termed as secure? When a procedure has been applied. And we are saying when we can term a electronic a signature to be secure, when it is under the control of the signatory and the data was affixed in a manner as prescribed. So, now we can affix a secure electronic signature onto a secure electronic data, and then it can be used for transmission. So, understand it in a better way. For example, a digital signature which is secure can be affixed to a record being filed with a body, and that record has to be secure. If both of these are secure, then the correct filing can be done, or the filing can be done as prescribed. So, that is the importance of a secure electronic record and a secure electronic signature. So, that is covered in section 14 and 15. And as we referred that section 16 describes the security procedure which has been referred in section 14. Now, what is the security procedure? This section provides that the central government has the power to prescribe the security procedure in respect of secure electronic records and secure electronic signatures. The central government has been given the power. We said that record will be secure if the procedure is followed, and we said the signature will be secure if the procedure is followed. And then who will decide the procedure? For deciding the procedure, the section 16 says that the central government has the power to prescribe both the security procedure in respect of secure electronic records and secure electronic signatures. The central government, it is a national act, so that is why most of the powers have been given to the central government. In doing so, the central government shall take into account various factors like the nature of transaction, level of sophistication of the technological capacity of the partners, availability and cost of alternative procedures, volume of similar transactions, etc., etc. So, based on all these things, the central government will prescribe that what security procedures have to be followed for calling an electronic record as secure or calling an electronic signature as secure. So, these are the three sections. It is very easy to summarize these three. 14 talks about when we can call a electronic record to be secure. 15 talks about when can we call a electronic signature to be secure, and both section 14 and section 15 mention about a security procedure to be followed. And where has that security procedure been given? That has been given as part of section 16. So, these three sections in totality cover the chapter 5 of the Information Technology Act 2000 as amended in 2008. The next chapter would be chapter 9, that is penalties and adjudication. Penalties, offences, all these are penalties, and adjudication is covered as part of section as part of chapter 9, and we will cover sections 43 to 45 within this particular chapter and these particular sections. Now, penalties. Now, with the advent of information technology, with the increasing usage of information technology, the crimes relating to information technology have also increased. lot of things are coming up. People are trying to hack other people's system. People are trying to gain unwarranted access to other people's system. People are trying to disrupt other people's systems. People are trying to cause damage to other people's systems. So should not these things be plugged? If government would not have written or not have mentioned about any consequences of doing all these things, this would not have been covered anywhere. Because the regular acts which cover lot of criminal procedures, for example, the Indian Penal Code, IPC, those normally do not, when those acts were written, they never had sections which talked about criminal or offences concerned with the use of IT. So instead of making changes to the Indian Penal Code, the government decided why not this act be used as a medium to plug or to take control of any such offences which are happening. So that's why a lot of sections were inserted within the IT Act. First, we'll take up this section 43, penalty and compensation for damage to a computer. This has been divided into two parts. One part talks about the general section and the second part is specifically for the body corporates or the companies. If any person without permission of the owner or any other person who is in charge of the computer system or computer network performs the below given acts, he shall be liable to pay damages by way of compensation to the person so affected. If a person without permission of the owner or any other person who is in charge of the computer, which means that if one person is doing any damage to any other person, any other person's computer system or computer network by doing a list of activities, he shall be liable to pay damages. Whatever loss has been borne by the person because of the acts of this particular person, those he has to compensate for those acts and pay the damages. A very, very important section 43. Within this, you will see that the first line I have read, there has been reference to the three words which are very similar: computer, computer system, or computer network. In fact, if you will go through the definitions which have been covered in section 1, there are definitions, there are separately terms have been defined separately: computer, computer system, and computer network. You might go through this definition, but within this section, whenever these three terms are used, in fact, you should try to remember these as one term, because this one term or this set of three terms have been repeated again and again in this particular section. So it is easier it's easier to remember these three words together: computer system, computer, and computer network. So let's now see what all acts have been mentioned in section 43 on doing which a person is supposed to pay damages to the person who has suffered because of this act. There is a list of activities which have been given. Securing access to the computer system or computer network or even computer resource. Securing access, that is, you are trying to log in to some other person's computer system or computer network. Securing access, we all know access could be physical access, logical access. We have studied about different types of accesses. So if you are trying to make a unauthorized access, we are talking only about unauthorized things, because we already said without permission of the owner or any other person who is in charge. So that means unauthorized access. So if you are trying to secure access to computer system or computer network belonging to the owner or any other person authorized by the owner, that is one area, that is one point for which you can be held liable to pay the damages. Then downloading, copying, or extracting any data, computer database or information. From where? Again, from such computer system or computer network, or data held or stored in any removable storage medium. Now again, very, very important point. It so often happens that people try to take some sensitive or important data from organization systems. For example, I know I am a textile company and I know I am working on very rigid, very rigid costing, very stringent margins. I know my margin is not very high. Now I want to see what is the costing of my competitor. How do I know that? I ask one of my representatives to, for example, visit his company and try to get familiar with the people and try to take out some data from his systems. If I can get the costing information about his products, then maybe I can see where can I defeat him in the competition. So I try to take out, I'll try to download, extract or copy the data from where? From his computer system or computer network, or even data held in any removable storage medium. Now what is a removable storage medium? A pen drive, a hard drive, hard disk as we call it. These are all removable storage mediums, that is, these are mediums to store information and these can easily be removed. So whenever you are trying to download, copy or extract any data or database or information from any computer system or computer network, or even from any removable storage medium, again you can be held liable to pay damages. Next, introducing any computer contaminant or computer virus into any computer system or network. Now again, if you do these things, that is, you introduce any computer contaminant or computer virus, then again you can be held liable. These terms, computer contaminant and computer virus, have also been defined as part of the explanation of this section. So let us first read all the points and then we'll go to the explanation. We see what has been defined, because these definitions have not been given as part of section 1, but separately mentioned within this section: computer contaminant and computer virus. Contaminant, we all know that anything which can spoil something is called a contaminant. So contaminant could be any program or anything which can cause trouble in a computer. So if you are trying to introduce a virus to a system, or you are trying to send a virus or a contaminant to some other system, again you can be liable to pay compensation to the person who has suffered any damages because of this contaminant being introduced. You sent a virus, you crashed somebody's systems, he lost lot of data, his business suffered, he had to suffer some losses, he'll definitely can claim from you. So again, this particular activity has also been covered as part of section 43. Damages any computer system or computer network or computer data, database or programs residing in such computer system or network. So if you damage any computer system or network, as part of your notes I've already underlined, and you could also highlight the fact that computer system and computer network, it's as good as one word for this particular section. It's being repeated in every single line almost. So damaging any computer system or computer network, or any data or programs residing in such computer system or computer network, again you can be held for paying the damages. Disrupting any computer system or computer network. Then denying access or causing denial of access to any person authorized to access any computer system or network. Denying access, that is, a person is legally authorized to work on a system. For example, you change his passwords or you do certain manipulation that he is not able to access his computers, is not able to work on his computers, then again you can be held liable to pay damages to the person who has been affected by such act of yours. So again, denying access or causing denial of service to any person authorized to access any computer system or computer network. Providing assistance to any person to access any computer system or network in contravention of the provisions of the Act or its rules. So it is not important that one person has to do all these things. Even if he provides assistance to somebody else, he can again be held liable. For example, I cannot say that I never went to the company to introduce a virus, that this friend of mine took a pen drive and he inserted the virus. Maybe I have generated this virus for him, maybe I have written the program which can be used by him for causing the damage. So even I would be liable, because although I am not directly involved in the crime, but I am definitely assisting in the crime, so even I can be held liable. So providing assistance to any person, or providing assistance to any person to access a computer system or computer network in contravention of any provisions of the Act or its rules. Then charging the services availed by one person to the account of another person by tampering with or manipulation of any computer system or network. Charging the services availed by a person to the account of any other person. For example, I want to buy something on the internet. I go to the website, I purchase a certain product, now I have to make the payment. Instead of using my own bank, my own login ID and password, I use somebody else's bank account, somebody else's login ID, somebody else's password, login password, transaction password, and I actually make the payment from that account. I am again indulging in a fraudulent activity. So I can again be held liable for this. So it's very important again to note that charging the services availed by one person to the account of another person by tampering with or manipulation of computer system or computer network is again an act which can be for which one can be held liable to pay damages. Destroys, deletes or alters any information residing in a computer resource, or diminishes its value or utility, or affects its injuriously by any means, again you can be held liable. And finally, steals, conceals, destroys or alters or causes any person to do all these things to a computer source code used for a computer resource, this again the person can be held liable. So here the point relating to the computer source code has been considered, that is the programs, if they are damaged, again the person can be held liable. These last 2 points were actually amended in year 2008 because the importance of these things were coming in. For example, before that it was not thought about that even the programs can be damaged to cause data, to cause a loss to an organization. It is not important to only steal data, but you can in fact change the codes. If you change the codes, the programs, then lot of things might not function in an information system, and that can cause a bigger damage to an organization than the damage which can be caused by stealing data or manipulating data, because data you might still be able to restore, but if the programs are made corrupt or made or altered in such a way that they cannot function, then the loss can even be bigger. So all these activities have been covered as part of section 43. So let's just have a recap of what all one should not do and what all can land a person in trouble and he has to pay damages to the other person who has been affected. Securing access to computer system, computer network. Downloading or copying any data, database or information from where? From computer system, computer network. Then introducing any computer contaminant or virus, where? Computer system, computer network. Then damaging any computer system or network. Then disrupting it, then denying access or causing denial of access to any person authorized to access, or access what? Computer system and computer network. And providing assistance to any person to do all these things, again it's a crime. And then charging the services availed by one person to the account of some other person, again a crime. And then destroying, deleting or altering any information residing in a system or diminishing its value, again a crime. And even the programs, that is computer source codes, these can also be stolen or concealed, destroyed or altered. Again these are liable to be, again the person who is doing such damage is liable to pay compensation to the people who have been affected. So all these have been covered as part of the list of acts which can cause a person to be held liable and to pay damages to the person who has been affected. Now, we have used a lot of terms within this section which have been explained separately as part of this section. So, let us see what all has been covered under the explanations in section 43. The first definition as given in the explanation is the computer contaminant. Computer contaminant means any set of instructions. Instructions means it's a program, it's a set of instructions that are designed to modify, destroy, record, transmit data or programs residing within a computer system or a network. So, any such instructions which are whose objective is to modify, destroy or record or transmit any data or any programs within a computer system or a network, that is can be called as a computer contaminant, or by or means any set of instructions whose objective is to assert, that is take over the normal operation of the computer system or network. So, either you are trying to modify, destroy, delete or record or transmit, or you are trying to take over. That any such program, any such set of instructions which facilitates this can be called as a computer contaminant. Then computer database has been defined. Computer database is a representation of information. We all know what's a database, but let's see what the definition of data says as per IT Act. Computer database means a representation of information, knowledge, facts, concepts or instructions in text, image, audio, video that are being prepared or have been prepared in a formalized manner or produced by a computer system or a computer network, and which are intended for use in a computer system or a network. So, it is a representation of the information, knowledge, facts, concepts or instructions. And how are they represented? In text form or in images or audios or videos. So, in fact, all the files, the Word files, the Excel files, the video files, the audio files, in totality they can be referred to as a computer database. That is representation of information in forms of a text, an image, an audio or a video, etc. The in totality is referred to as a computer database. Then we have the definition of computer virus. Virus means any computer instruction, information or program that destroys, damages, degrades or affects the performance of a computer resource or attaches itself to another computer resource and operates when a program, data or instruction is executed. That's a virus. It's an instruction, an information, data or a program that destroys, damages or affects the performance of a resource. And how does it operate? When a program, data or instruction is executed or some other event takes place in the computer resource. So, again another troublesome thing is a computer virus. Damage means to destroy, alter, delete, add, modify or rearrange any computer resource, and computer resource code, that is the program, means the listing of programs, computer commands, design and layout. So, these are the different explanations to section 43. These are important, these are very basic terms, but these had to be defined in the act, otherwise the interpretation can be an issue. For example, somebody causes damage to a computer database, tomorrow there can be issues in what is a database. So, it is better that the same thing should be defined in the act itself, and that is what the government did. Rather than leaving it to interpretation at a later stage, they decided why not put, although these are very common terms, but they decided why not put everything in the act itself. We all know what's a database, we all know what's a virus, but yes, it was important to put everything into the act to avoid any litigation later. There could still be litigations, but yes, definitely they were reduced by defining all these things. So, that is the first part of penalties, where we have talked of the specific penalties as prescribed in section 43. The second part of section 43 specifically pertains to the body corporates, the companies. For them specifically this particular section or this particular part has been added in section 43. Where a body corporate, that's a company, possessing, dealing or handling any sensitive personal data or information in a computer resource which is owns, controls or operates is negligent in implementing and maintaining reasonable security procedures and thereby causes a loss or wrongful gain to any person, such body corporate shall be liable to pay damages by way of compensation to the person so affected. Now, why did this section come into prominence? Because lot of companies were holding lot of data for other peoples. For example, the BPOs. The BPOs, for example, I am a company which is looking after the credit card activities of an organization. I am looking after the, I am providing services to credit card customers. I have the entire database of the credit card customers for a credit card company. And because of negligence on my part to secure this data, to make it safe, something goes wrong with the data, somebody steals that information because I did not apply good enough security procedures. So even I can be held liable. I can be held liable. If credit card numbers were stolen because of my negligence, then I am also liable for that. Similarly, there could be a company in India which is, for example, holding very critical information for somebody else. Let's say we all know that in US there is a concept of social security numbers. That is one number which contains all information about you. Just like we are planning to have an Aadhaar or any other number in India, the social security number contains all information about a person. Now, if that information is under the control of a BPO in India and by some reason for some reason this information is stolen and it is discovered that this BPO in India was negligent and did not apply good enough security procedures to protect the data, then even the BPO can be held liable because of this particular section. Where a body corporate possessing, dealing or handling any sensitive, personalized or personal data or information in a computer resource which it maintains, which it owns, controls or operates, is negligent in implementing and maintaining reasonable security policies and procedures and thereby causes wrongful loss or gain or to any person, such body corporate shall be held liable to pay damages by way of compensation to the person so effective. So that is the this particular section has been ensured, has been implemented to see that information is properly protected by the body corporates. Therefore, for this section there are for this part of the section again there are three explanations. We have defined what is a body corporate, we have defined what is a reasonable security procedure and we have defined what is sensitive personal data or information. Body corporate means any company and includes a firm, sole proprietorship or any other association of individuals engaged in commercial or professional activities. Here they have elaborated the definition. It started off with companies, but they have included all different entities. They have included firms, they have included sole proprietorship, they have included association of individuals. Everything has been included in the definition of body corporate. From the primarily this section is for companies, but now they have included, by the explanation, they have included all other entities also as part of body corporate. So it's not exactly similar to the body corporate as we defined in the Companies Act, because here it includes other entities also. Reasonable security policies and procedures. We said that the body corporate is supposed to apply reasonable security policies and procedures. So what are those policies and procedures which are reasonably secure? Reasonable security policies and procedures mean security practice and procedures designed to protect such information from unauthorized access, damage, use, modification, disclosure or impairment as may be specified in an agreement between the parties. First of all, we have to see whether any security procedures have been specified within in an agreement between the parties, which says that how has the, for example, the BPO required to keep my information safe, what policies and procedures have been mentioned. For example, it could be mentioned in the contract the organization will apply different security procedures such as firewalls would be used, logical access controls, physical access controls, this should be used, that should be used, antivirus should be installed. Maybe everything is written in the procedure. So if it is written in the agreement and you have not applied, then definitely compliance has not been done. Or first is this option, that maybe it is between the parties, or maybe specified in any law for the time being in force. Suppose this agreement is not there, but instead of that there is a law which says that. Or if both of these are there, then a reasonable security and procedure, security policy and procedure as prescribed by the central government can be considered here. So you need to do three things. Either you have to apply what is between the what is written in the agreement between the two parties, that has to be applied. Or if anything has been prescribed under the law, lot of times lot of entities are governed by cyber laws, and those laws prescribe these security procedures. Or if those are not there, there are some any reasonable policies and procedures which have been which can be prescribed by the central government can also be considered. So some security policies and procedures have to be there, and if you don't implement those, then again the body corporate can be held liable to pay damages. Sensitive personal data or information, another term has been mentioned. It means any personal information as may be prescribed by the government in consultation with such personal with such bodies or associations as it may deem fit. For example, the government may ask a premier IT body in the company to classify data as sensitive personal data, and that body might say the credit card information is sensitive, the banking information is sensitive, the income tax information is sensitive. It can be prescribed by the government. So these are the three explanations which have been mentioned as part of the second part of section 43. One is the general part, which talks about lot of acts for which damages can be claimed, and second specifically talks about any data being held by a body corporate. If data is leaked or it is manipulated or misused, then certain damages can be claimed. The next section in this particular chapter is section penalty for failure to furnish information, return, etc. If any person who is required under this act or rules or regulations made thereunder to furnish any document, return or report to the controller or certifying authority fails to furnish the same, he shall be liable to a penalty not exceeding 1,50,000 rupees for each such failure. We have already read in the definitions that a certifying authority is the authority which is granting digital signature certificates, and the controller or certifying authority is the monitoring body which controls the certifying authorities. So if you are supposed to if any person is supposed to furnish any report or return to such authorities and it doesn't do so, then it shall be liable to a penalty of 1,50,000 rupees for each offence. Or another thing, if he does not file any return or furnish any information, books or other documents within the time specified in the regulations, then again he shall be liable to a penalty not exceeding 5,000 rupees for every day during which this failure continues. So that's the second clause. First, you were supposed to furnish any document, return or a report to the controller or certifying authority, and the person failed to do so. And in secondly, is supposed to file any return or furnish any information, books or other documents within the time specified, and again he could not do so, then he is liable to again pay a penalty of 5,000 rupees per day. And thirdly, maintain books of accounts or records, fails to maintain the same, is required to maintain the books of accounts, he fails to maintain the same, again he shall be liable to penalty not exceeding 10,000 rupees for every day. And the last section within this is the residual penalty. Residual is the balancing penalty which is there. Whoever contravenes any rules or regulations made under the Act for contravention of which no penalty has been specifically provided. So it says that if any such act has been done for which there is no specific penalty under any of these sections, then still such person shall be liable to pay a compensation not exceeding 25,000 rupees to the person affected by such contravention, or penalty not exceeding 25,000 rupees. So, this is the residual penalty. If you take any act, in most of the acts there is a residual penalty, that is if no specific penalty has been prescribed for an offence, then tomorrow the offender cannot say that since no penalty has been given in the act, you cannot levy a penalty on me. So, to cover that, lot of times a residual penalty has been a section pertains to residual penalty, and in this particular case it is up to an amount not exceeding 25,000 rupees. So, this is all covered as part of the chapter 9, which includes sections 43, 44 and 45. 43 talks about penalties about a lot of activities and general and for body corporates in specific. 44 talks about penalties for failure to furnish information, and 45 is the residuary penalty section, which says that if a penalty has not been given for any activity specifically, then refer to this section. So, this is about chapter 9. So, my friend, now we move on to offences under the IT Act. These offences have been covered under chapter 11 of the IT Act. Apart from giving recognition to electronic contracts, the IT Act identifies certain acts as computer crimes and provides penalty for these offences. As we discussed that with the advent of technology and the usage of technology, even the computer crimes are increasing these days. And due to increase in computer crimes, it was thought of, especially in 2008, that lot of sections should be introduced, lot of provisions should be introduced which can impose penalties for certain computer crimes and offences, and all those have been covered under this particular chapter 11 of the IT Act. There are certain offences which have been listed, which can affect not only the users of internet, the netizens, the website owners, certifying authorities, and auditors. All these are impacted by the changes which can be, or by the offences which can be committed with the use of internet. So, all these offences have been plugged under certain sections, and a lot of sections have been introduced as part of chapter 11. We'll cover these sections. I will just give you the snapshot of the sections here, and you can refer to the faculty notes for detailed notings on these sections. And what you are saying would be a comparative chart which just lists or highlights the broad concept of the section. But if you have to attempt the question in the exam, you need to write more about the section, and we will cover that as part of the faculty notes. Section 65, tampering with computer source documents. If anybody tampers with the computer source documents, then there is punishment up to 3 years or fine up to 2 lakhs or both. Section 66, computer related offences. We had covered a lot of acts in section 43, in which we had discussed about if the person disrupts any person's computer system or computer network, or causes any damage, introduces any contaminant or virus. A lot of activities were covered for which compensation was required to be paid, but no penalty was given in section 43. It referred to the compensation being paid, but except this compensation, no other penalty was mentioned about in that particular section. That penalty has been given in this section, that is 66. So, the nature of offence is computer related offence, that is doing any act specified in section 43. Punishment up to 3 years, fine up to 5 lakhs or both. Then section 66A, sending offensive messages through a computer or mobile device. Punishment up to 3 years or fine. Sending offensive messages through computer or a mobile device. Now, a question would be coming to your mind is, are these offences or are these penalties, as we are just reading through the sections and we will be reading more of the sections, maybe you would be thinking that why have these punishments and fines being introduced here, the imprisonment or these fines, why are they not covered in other acts, in maybe any Indian Penal Code, etc. And maybe you are also thinking this, are these sections actually used? So, to answer that, had all these things been covered in IPC, as such there was no provision in the Indian Penal Code. So, a lot of modifications would have required to be done there. So, it was the government thought it better to cover all these things here, and that is why all these sections have been introduced as part of the IT Act, which plug all this, or which try to explain about the penalties for all such offences. And to second part of your question, which definitely you will be thinking, are these sections ever used, or are these sections ever used for imprisoning people or taking them into custody? Yes, these are. In fact, 1666A, which I have just discussed, and in fact I have stopped at this particular section to answer this thought of yours. This particular section 66A was very much in news a couple of years back, when a prominent leader of a state died, and a couple of girls commented on their social networking site, and those girls were arrested under this particular section. It was a private comment, but the monitoring was such, and these two girls were arrested for sending offensive messages through a computer or mobile device. They had only one girl had posted a comment about her views about a leader having died, and her views were posted on that, and another girl simply liked that page, and both of them were arrested under section 66A. So, yes, these sections are into prominence, and they can be used to punish for any offensive through offensive messages being sent through computer or mobile device, and the punishment is again up to 3 years along with fine. Then we have section 66B, receiving stolen computer resource or communication device. Again, the punishment up to 3 years, fine up to 1 lakhs, or both. 66C, punishment for identity theft. Punishment up to 3 years, fine up to 1 lakhs. Identity theft, you are using somebody else's digital signature to file, or doing any such act, you can be penalized for identity theft. Punishment for cheating or personating using a computer offense. Lot of people are doing these things these days. For example, on social networking sites, if you meet and people then try to cheat somebody else by taking by impersonating as if that person is somebody else, these things have also been covered. There is a fine up to 1 lakhs and punishment up to 3 years. So, all these things which have come up over the years, government decided to introduce penalties for all such things in 2008. Next is section 66E, punishment for violating privacy or video voyeurism. Even that is punishable by for a period up to 3 years, or fine up to 2 lakhs, or both. Then 66F, another section which has come so much into prominence. This talks about the cyber terrorism. Cyber terrorism with the intent to threaten the unity, integrity, security, or sovereignty of the people, or any section of the people using computer resources. It can be the fine or the penalty for this is imprisonment up to life. In fact, so often these days we hear that, for example, there's a blast has happened somewhere, and somebody sends a mail, and that mail is tracked, and that person is arrested if he has sent the mail. All these are parts of cyber. How the internet and the media is being used for doing certain activities, for posing threats, or causing alarms to the society, causing panics using the internet, etc. All these things are being captured by have been now a section has been introduced to control all these things, that is section 66F. Another case in this could be, let us assume that there is a prominent website of a government body or a government company, and that site is attacked, or the site is crashed intentionally by somebody else, then it is again a form of cyber terrorism. So, all these things are covered under section 66F. Then we have section 67, punishing of information which is obscene in electronic form. Again, on the first instance, the punishment is up to 5 years, and on second or subsequent conviction, punishment up to 10 years or fine up to 2 lakhs. So, that is another stringent penalty which has been introduced. And then publishing or transmitting material in electronic form which is explicit, again a first conviction is for 5 years or fine up to 10 lakhs, and the next conviction is or any subsequent conviction, the punishment is up to 10 years, up to 7 years, and fine up to 10 lakhs. Section 67B, publishing or transmitting material depicting children in explicit acts in electronic form, that is also punishable. Up to 5 years or plus fine up to rupees 10 lakhs. And after any subsequent conviction, the punishment is up to 7 years or fine up to 10 lakhs. So that is the amount of penalty which is being levied for these acts these days. In section 71, penalty for misrepresentation or suppression of any material fact from the controller or certifying authority. That is, you are supposed to submit certain information to the certifying authority or the controller of certifying authority, and either you do not submit the correct information or you trying to misguide by providing wrong information. Again, penalty is there, punishment up to 5 years, fine up to 1 lakh rupees or both. Then we have section 72. Now, in this section 72, my friend, the breach of confidentiality and privacy of electronic records, books, information, etc. by a person who has access to them without consent of the person to whom they belong. Again, punishment up to 2 years, fine up to 1 lakhs or both. Penalty for publishing false digital signature, punishment up to 2 years, fine up to 1 lakhs or both. And lastly, the penalty for fraudulent publication of DSC, the penalty up to 2 years, punishment up to 2 years, fine up to 1 lakh or both. So these are the different penalties and provisions which have been given under this particular act. The whole objective of this is to ensure that whatever offences or fraudulent acts are being covered or are being done with the help of information technology, different devices using IT, be it a social media, be it the internet, be it the any other mobile device, all these things would be covered as part of the offences which are in chapter 11. So this is the end of topic 7.1, that is the IT Act 2008, which is one of the prominent regulatory acts which have been introduced in the last few years to ensure the information technology is not misused, and lot of clarity has been brought about the use of information technology by this particular